Era 2, Jim Crow, ended with the transition of civil rights. That transitional era ended in 1969 when President Richard Nixon won the election and was sworn into office, running on a campaign of law and order. We now move into the third era, one within which we are now living. Some thought that the election of Barack Obama would be the beginning of a new era, but the backlash from the election of Donald Trump confirmed that it was not. The deadlock in Congress ensures that the current era will extend for an unknown period of time. This era is referred to as the mass incarceration era. Remember that Richard Nixon ran on a campaign of law and order, a campaign direction that was picked up by those who followed him, both Republican and Democrat. You can see on this slide data from the Sentencing Project, the lifetime likelihood of imprisonment of U.S. residents. African American men have a 1 in 3 chance of being in prison. Latinx men 1 in 6, and that's compared to 1 in 17 for white men. There is similar disproportionality with regard to Black, Latina, and white women. But it's not just the chance of going to prison, it's the overall incredible numbers. The graph on the left of this slide shows where the name mass incarceration comes from. The increase in the prison population started in the mid-1970s and continued steadily for 30 years. Only recently has the trend begun a slightly downward direction. Will that be sustained, or will it turn back up again? It is stunning to see the rate of incarceration in the U.S. compared to other nations. Per 100,000 people, the United States locks up more people than El Salvador, Rwanda, Brazil, Russia, Australia, Spain, China, Canada. Why is it that we lock up so many people? Why did this rate of increase occur? Well, one reason is from drug offenses. And you can see how they exploded exponentially from 1980 into 2019. And remembering that we are a multi-layered system. So people are being imprisoned not only at the federal level, but the state level and in local jails. In fact, far more in state prisons and in local jails. A hopeful sign occurred in 2018 when, in a rare display of bipartisanship, Congress adopted the First Step Act. It is a product of years of advocacy by people across the political spectrum to try to find ways to reduce the prison population and to bring greater fairness to the imprisonment of people. It does two discrete things, both aimed at making the federal justice system more fair and more focused on rehabilitation. Its sentencing reform components shorten federal prison sentences and give people additional chances to avoid mandatory minimum penalties by expanding a safety valve that allows a judge to impose a sentence lower than the statutory minimum in some cases. These parts of the First Step Act are almost automatic. Once the act was signed, judges immediately began sentencing people to shorter prison terms in cases before them. As reported by the Brennan System, people in federal prison for pre-2010 crack cocaine offenses immediately became eligible to apply for resentencing to a shorter prison term. The law's prison reform elements are designed to improve conditions in federal prison, such as curbing inhumane practices, such as eliminating the use of restraints on pregnant women. Another is encouraging placing people in prisons where they're closer to their families and can remain connected and have the opportunity to re-enter society when they come out. Another sign of hope is efforts to reduce the disenfranchisement of people who have had their voting rights taken away. This has occurred in a number of states, including the Commonwealth of Virginia. And we can see in the graph on the left-hand side of this slide a turning of that curve, with fewer people losing their voting rights just because they committed a crime. Of concern, however, are continuing efforts at voter suppression. ID laws, access to polls, all of these efforts are currently being considered in states across this country in an effort to supposedly maintain election integrity. Their real intent is to make it harder for people to vote. The other way that voting is significantly impacted is how districts are drawn. And with the completion of the 2020 census, states have been busy rewriting their maps to give one party or another an advantage. This effort takes on racial tones as some Republican legislatures try to gain an advantage over Democrats by reducing the impact of the African American vote. In blue states, Democrats are looking for similar advantages. A recent case in Alabama is an example, which for now the Supreme Court has let stand, diluting African American voting in that state. The map is from the website 538. It is an interactive map showing the evolution for control over state legislatures and Congress. How these maps are set for the upcoming elections will determine the policy direction in the coming years. As noted earlier, this era, in addition to being referred to as mass incarceration, is also known as colorblind racism, a term that seems contradictory. It would seem that colorblindness is an ideal, that race should not matter, when clearly it does. In 2007, Chief Justice John Roberts, in an opinion, wrote that the way to stop discrimination on the basis of race is to stop discriminating on the basis of race. The concept is that if we don't even see race, we cannot act in a prejudicial way. The problem with this theory is that people see race. Thus, there are two components to this concept. Some people may sincerely want to be colorblind and believe that they are. They may value the concept that all people should be treated the same regardless of their color or race. This is not a racist view. It is the idealistic view. It is a view espoused by Dr. King and others. To what extent a person, however, may act in a colorblind way is a different question, considering our history and implicit and unconscious biases. Nonetheless, a world within which people are treated fairly has long been our goal. Other people see colorblindness as a tool to reduce the gains by people of color, or more accurately, to re-advantage white people by pretending not to notice race and pretending that the 402 years of racial history are irrelevant. They feel that equity has gone too far in favor of historically disadvantaged people and that it has hurt the chances of white people. Colorblind ideology is at the heart of reverse discrimination and opposition to affirmative action. It presumes that there are race-neutral, so-called objective quantitative measures that can accurately assess a person's potential and predict achievement. It is a way, in the end though, of perpetuating historical advantages and disadvantages. Over 403 years, we have created a complicated American history. The number of public policies affected by race at the federal, state, and local levels are far too many to calculate. We've only addressed a few, and those in very, very limited depth. We have a lot of history to learn, and we need to learn that history in order to create a better future.